Ripon, the founder of BritBanglaCovid and author of COVID Crisis, the Brit-Bangla Response. And I do want to say, by the way, thank you for attending, because the event is as much about what that we're seeing, but it's also about you. Partly because, or mainly because, we all have our own shared experiences around the pandemic. And I've been in a privileged position to have been able to be, I suppose, capture some of the voices of my community, in this case, the Bengali community, predominantly from the East End of London.
I want to really, first of all, congratulate you, Ripon, for this very, very important publication that you've produced. I think when you mentioned it was a momentous publication or historic publication, I don't think that's a word that we use lightly, but it's appropriate and apt for this evening, because the publication you've put together really documents the extraordinary work that people within our communities did during one of the most difficult periods in our country's history.
And rather like Ripon's book and some of the people who feature in the exhibition, what our work tried to do was to document people's everyday lives during the pandemic as they were instructed to stay at home. So how did people cope as their worlds constricted? How did they manage work, school, study, parenting, shopping, exercise, friendships? How did they keep in touch with family elsewhere in the country or often abroad too? How did they maintain their faith? How did they deal with becoming sick, and as we've been hearing too, deal with the trauma of family members becoming sick and sadly in some cases, of course, dying? How did they care for those people who were vulnerable or who they worried about? So all things that actually will be familiar, I guess, to everybody in this room from the pandemic period.
Ripon really wanted to hear about my life and the journey that I had been on leading up to the launch of my brand. And I want to share that story with you all today. Coming to the UK at the age of 5 and not being able to speak a word of English, I was bullied at school because of this. Some 30 years later, my boss in the Mayor of London's press office pointed out to me the irony of choosing to make my career in communications